Hi guys, I also requested some walk-on music like David did, but I was told it was too explicit, so we won't be able to play that today. I apologise. Did you steal the clicker as well? No, you didn't. Okay. You got to watch that guy. He'll take anything. Hi guys. I'm Spike. I'm going to talk to you about some dry stuff, the money stuff around esports and where that is. Not as exciting as what you've heard before. I apologise. So, what do I do? I wear two hats at the moment. I am the venture director for Hiro Capital. We are a €100 million fund that is focusing on games, esports, and digital sports, founded by Ian Livingston, which many of you will know. And I'm also have a startup that I launched with the ex-president of ESL America about a year ago now, called Prize Payments. So I've seen it from both sides, from a small startup raising our first $1 million in the esports space on the West Coast, to deploying large amounts of capital across businesses in the games and esports space. So hopefully you trust me when I say that I know enough about this to be dangerous. I want to do a reminder. You've heard all through the day about esports, what it is, what it means. I'm going to just take it back to basics and just remind you that esports is the natural evolution of multiplayer gaming. That's what it is. I've put an N64 controller there because that was one of my first experience with multiplayer gaming. Four of us sitting on the couch arguing over who would play as Oddjob because he had the smallest hitbox, while another four of us stood behind the sofa watching, being entertained and swapping over when the time was right. So you go back, you've seen slides on Space Invaders and tournaments back in the early 80s, but just want to remind everyone what we're talking about when we talk about esports. What's the market overview? Well, it's good news. There are some very strong macro tailwinds in the space. What does that mean? It means that I think everybody agrees esports is getting bigger and bigger, and it's going to continue to grow. There's no defined formula for success, although esports in its current guise, my previous employers, ESL, have been around for 20 years in the space, what Ralph and Jens have been doing and the guys there. There is no sort of success to easily replicate. There's also a lack of understanding in the space, and that's something that needs to be addressed as well. We'll go into these in more detail. There's a lack of mature deal flow. What does that mean? It means that unlike other areas of investment, it is not super clear. There aren't lots of established companies at different stages that you can invest in. And also the valuations are very unreliable. So what do I mean? Everyone, if you work in esports, you'll recognize this Newzoo graph, the infamous Newzoo graph, which tells everyone how big esports is and how big it's going to be. What do I mean by this? So, there's no doubt that esports is continuing to rise and to get bigger. There's continual advances in technology. Back in my day, if I wanted to play a game of Counter-Strike, I had to type in server IPs and port numbers and make sure that my anti-cheat was updated, my config file was right, and I had to find games on IRC, or then HLSW came and it blew everything open. But my point is that the technology continues to make esports and competitive games easier to play, easier to talk to your friends and communicate. Discord is the current sort of TeamSpeak, Ventrilo, Mumble kind of thing that everyone is using, but that will obviously evolve as well as time comes. There's a convergence of digital sports and esports. We're both learning from each other. And that means we're blurring the lines as well between what a digital sport is and what an e-sport is. Formula E, Formula One, great example, the sim racing space, right, that are learning from esports, but those sim racers are then going on to become professional drivers. Or what Formula E did with the social media boost, clearly inspired by the current sort of trends in the digital space. Longevity in esports continues to make the space grow as well. How many 4-year-olds support West Ham because they thought, that's a really great team, rather than their parents brought them to a West Ham game? I mean, that's the same, right? SK resonates with me. Not that it's around at the moment, but SK resonates with me because I remember the days of Heaton and the Screw-Up Commandos. So if I had a kid, luckily I don't, he would certainly be brought up in that ecosystem of esports teams. And finally, brands and sponsors are spending more and more in the space. So it's all looking really good. However, there's no defined formula of success. Very few in the ecosystem are profitable. And what I mean by that is the publishers are making money, players are making money, everybody else is figuring it out, with 99% of them not making money. The industry is young. Publishers are making speculative bets. What Nate Nanza created at Overwatch League is going to be very different to what he creates in Fortnite coming up. And that was a speculative investment by the teams and by Activision into Overwatch League, and they spend a very large amount of money on that. There is no template to copy. There is no sort of, I'm going to be what this is to Facebook, or I'm going to be what Twitter is to this market. It doesn't exist yet because the companies are still very frothy. Tools are evolving fast. I'm aware of the time, apologies. And also, gamer networks are esoteric and hard to understand. Why is Escape from Tarkov so poignant right now and so cool right now? Why was Slay the Spire so cool? Why do people back in the day, prefer playing Counter-Strike to Urban Terror? Why does Quake 3 why does Quake not resonate anymore when it used to be so pivotal in the esports space? So again, it's hard to read the market. There's a lack of understanding in the space. The esports talent pool is very thin, and it continues to be difficult for people to find expertise. We've heard about it a lot. There's a wild west of esports consultants. If you want to know how many esports consultants currently are on LinkedIn, go to Red Eye's Twitter page and he'll let you know. Okay, that was an in-joke, that's fine. Esports is esoteric enough within the games industry. It's extraordinary in venture capital, and therefore there aren't a lot of people who really understand the space well enough to be making the right investments. Lack of mature deal flow. I would have made this even more aggressive, but unfortunately my Microsoft PowerPoint skills aren't what they used to be. But the point stands that what is great about this industry is there are a lot of really smart people doing cool stuff that understand esports, and there's a lot of examples of those startups, and they are at the angel investment phase. So they're getting their first 250,000, their first 500,000, and they're starting to build out the product, or they're self-funding. There's a lot of that going on, which is really, really good. And it's extra specially good. Actually, I'll tell you why on the next slide. Next, there's this sort of seed level of funding. So this is when a company now wants its first couple of million, and it's ready to, it's proven the concept, and now it's ready to go to market, get users, continue to iterate. And that is the amount of deal flow in there. The amount of companies that are at that stage is very, very small at the moment. That's just because of the industry in general, and because of how immature it is. And then finally, Series A. This is where my personal interest is on the investor side, and that is when a company now has made its first success, is ready to go out, scale, take on new countries, build out its second or third product. And those check sizes are sort of between 2 and 10 million. And there is probably, I could count on my hand how many companies are ready for that stage in the esports space, and even less of them are really serious about it. So for an investor, that means there isn't the supply in order to create the demand of institutional investors at the seed and Series A stage at this time. And unreliable valuations. Esports valuations are hot. They are almost ridiculous in some instances, and that's just because investors, when interest rates are so low around the world, I'm sure there's people much smarter than me in the room who can elaborate on this more than I can, but it means that they need growth, and venture funds and things like that create growth industries, create a high demand from investors, and we've seen with WeWork and things like that how that ends up sometimes. Signal to noise ratio is high. For every young, talented esports expert who's come up with a great idea, there is someone who has played the venture game before or played the investment game before, who is trying to leverage that hotness of the market to get some quick money. The valuations are driven by team investments and franchise slots. David talked a little bit about that earlier. These are very, very high prices for untested returns. Also, that the sort of investors that invest in teams, these are high net worth individuals or family offices, that is a very different investment category to someone, a venture capitalist who wants to invest in a platform or a technology or something like that. So again, that is skewing the market. And it will, I think, crystallize a little bit. There's a lack of quantifiable benchmarks for traditional venture analysts. Traditional venture funds are very risk averse these days, and normally there's a large committee of lots of analysts diving into all sorts of different things to try and understand where this is going to go. Because of the market, because it being immature, because it being young, there aren't those benchmarks, and therefore the risk profile goes up. And finally, this general industry trend away from growth profitability is also having a sort of a push and pull effect in the market with WeWork and Uber, and we've seen what happens there when you start to throw silly valuations out for growth businesses, how it can crash down pretty quickly. So again, increases the risk profile. However, there is some great news for you all. There is no better time to be raising money in esports. For a lot of reasons that we have already covered. There are a lot of industry veterans now who have exited from their previous ventures and want to send the elevator back down, which means from angel investment perspective, from early seed stage investment, there is a lot of money there that people want to invest and want to make work for them in a space that they know. So that is good news. There are some really good focused seed funds that understand the space. Bitcraft, perfect example of someone that really understands it really well and is out there deploying capital for their investors in a really good way in the seed stage, if you go back to that graph, of the esports space. Convoy, another great example of a fund that's doing some really clever guys doing some really clever stuff. So it is there. And finally, when you're ready for Series A and beyond, Hiro is here to help you achieve that. And it would be our pleasure to do that once you get ready for that. So thank you. I hope that was all right. I'm aware of time, or I'm slap on. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. If not, we'll crack on.
Yep. Do you guys have any questions? I look at him already.
Good, fine.
Now I have
this guy here.
Yes. You go there.
So, what sort of investments would you be basically looking for? I know that you're saying that people are ready to invest, but what are they looking for? Are they looking for games? Are they looking for tournament organizers? Are they looking for studios? Or what is it in this space that they're looking for?
Well, games I would put separate, so I think that's a separate tranche of investment. I think people who are looking to esports are looking for platforms or technology. You'll hear this word picks and shovels, which is one of those horrible buzzwords that people use, but it gets the point across. I.e., the technology that runs and underpins what's happening in the space. So, you know, if you look on the platform side, you could look at, for example, Smash GG, Battlefy, Challenge, those sorts of things. That's one sort of vertical. There's a lot of companies coming up at the moment who are trying to solve the matchmaking issues and finding players, so the Tinder for gamers, really, of trying to find teammates to play with, and so that you can, play with in a gaming sense. Yes, so I think people are looking for those platforms, those technologies that underpin it. Yeah. Cool.
I'm still stuck on the Tinder for gamers.
Yeah, sorry. We can scrub that out. You got to be careful these days.
No, it's on video. There's nothing you can do about it. Like, we're going to have Hiro Capital said they're looking for the Tinder for gamers.
Fine. And as long as we put my explicit music track in as well, we're good.
Do you guys have any other questions?
Great. Thank you very much, guys.
They can find you around as well.
Spike at hero.capital or Spike Says Yeah on Twitter. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Spike.